My name is Brad Hicks, and I am the pastor at Whiteland Missionary Baptist Church. And I want to tell my testimony or experience of salvation. To give a little background, I grew up, and my dad was a missionary to Alaska at a church in Anchorage. And all my childhood memories are just kind of growing up in church and seeing my dad preach and seeing song service and all those things go on. And then unfortunately, my dad became an alcoholic and went through some difficult times. And during that period of our life, we moved from Anchorage down to Cleveland, Tennessee. And it was down there where we stopped going to church and just began to have a pretty rough time as a family. And shortly, about 2 years after that, we moved to Indianapolis. My mom and my two sisters and I, and my dad soon followed, but my parents got a divorce. And when we were down in Tennessee, I went to a school, Arnold Elementary School, and I had a friend at that elementary school by the name of James, and him and I were best buddies. We did everything together. And when I moved from Tennessee, I was in the third grade, so I was about 9 years old, 8 or 9 years old. And it really devastated me when we moved here because we moved very abruptly. And I never got to say goodbye to James. I never got to say goodbye to my friends in the apartment complex that I lived in. And when we moved up here, one of the big struggles I had as a little kid was that I couldn't find a friend like James. I couldn't find a best friend. And one day I would go to the counselor very often in elementary school, and I would talk to her, and I would cry a lot in my bedroom just about my family situation. And I would often during the school day, I would go to the bathroom and I would pray that God would put my parents back together. And in the third grade, I remember going into a bathroom stall and I just kind of knelt down a little bit and I started to pray for my parents. And it was at that moment that overwhelmingly I knew that I was lost. God told me that I didn't need to worry about my parents, that I needed to worry about my soul. And immediately I knew what had happened, that I was separated from God. I didn't understand the specifics or the biblical side of that, but I knew I was lost and I needed to be saved. And it was at that point for a little over a year that I began to pray at revivals and seek the Lord. And though I felt convicted and though I knew I needed the Lord, there was something that even to this day I'm not sure I know what it was, or things that stand in my way from completely repenting and trusting in God for salvation. And I remember I was at Bethel and we'd gone through a week's revival, and it was a Sunday morning and I was sitting over on one side of the church, and after the preaching got done, the song service, there was an invitation song, and I just kind of stood there, and throughout the message I hadn't really been paying attention a lot, and a good brother, Barry Hagan, came back to me and he asked me if I was lost. And I still remember very vividly, that was the first thing he said out of his mouth. He said, "Brad, are you lost? And do you want to go to the altar?" And I was lost, but I answered the second question of whether I wanted to go to the altar. I said no. And he started talking to me a little bit about needing to be saved, about needing to seek the Lord. And so Barry had always been an older man that I looked up to. He was my dad's age, and he always seemed so interested in my sports activities and just everything that I did. And so I didn't want to disappoint him, so I went to the altar, and I just kind of bowed, and people bowed around me. And to be honest, I didn't do much praying. And as I was bowing there, somebody requested a song. And the name of that song is "What a Friend We Have in Jesus." And as I was sitting there and began to listen to the words of the song, I realized that I had been seeking a friend to replace James in all the wrong places, and that the real friend that I needed was the Lord. I needed Him to be my friend. I needed Him to save me. And it was at that time that I really began to call out to the Lord to save me. And it was just after over a year of seeking and seemingly struggling from time to time, all I can remember is that I was down and I was praying and I was just gripping my hands and just begging God to save me. I felt convicted. I just felt this heaviness in my heart and this pressure in my heart, and just all at once it was just all gone. And it wasn't all these fireworks, it wasn't all this explosion and noise. It was that before then I felt all this noise and these pressures, and I guess that's the only word I know how to describe it, is just this weight that was on me. And then the moment God saved me, it's like all of it was gone. I just had peace and this calmness. And it almost stunned me. It shocked me. I was sitting there and I wondered to myself, like, is this it? It was that me really getting saved. And because I had struggled for so long and I just didn't realize that it could happen so fast, I guess. And soon thereafter, just within those few moments, I just began to feel this bubbling of love and peace. And I remember I continued to try that the Lord would save me, and it almost felt like a foreign prayer. Like I couldn't pray that anymore. I couldn't ask the Lord to forgive me or to save me because He just did. And I remember I got up and I told my mom and I told the church, and ever since then, I guess if I could describe my salvation since then, it's that the peace that I got from that moment has always been with me. The troubles in my home didn't stop as a kid. The difficulties in becoming a man didn't stop from stemming from the problems in my home. But all the way through, I've just had this peace that God is there to help me. And I just want anybody who's listening to know that regardless of the problems in your family life, that God can change you. And I just thank the Lord so much for just giving me peace. Because as a kid, I was a roller coaster, and after God saved me, it just felt so still and okay. And it still does. It still feels peaceful. And when I think about the difficulties in my life and the things that I'm trying to do for my own family now, and when I get to difficult times, I just can always go back to the time and place where God gave me peace. And that since that moment, I've always known that I've got a friend who I can trust in and confide in, who speaks back to me and gives me guidance in my life. And if you're not saved, I just want you to know that God can do that for you, and that He can save you. And I hope this has been some help to somebody. God bless you.